Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Candor with Pres Eve. I am delighted that you've joined us once again for another episode, and I am just thrilled to have with me two of my favorite state reps. We have with us Representative Mindy Domb and Representative Natalie Blais. So great to have you with us today, ladies. Welcome.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Rep Domb, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your district? We're all ears.
Sure. I'm Mindy Domb. I represent the 3rd Hampshire District, which includes the wonderful towns of Amherst, Pelham, and half of Granby. I've lived in Amherst for over 22 years, which is hard to think about because it is the place that I've lived the longest, although it's a place that I moved by choice. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the New York area. Before becoming representative, when I was elected in 2018, I was the executive director of the Amherst Survival Center. And prior to that, I worked with drug and alcohol treatment providers and people who use drug and alcohol treatment, as well as in jails around the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And I started that work in New York when I worked for a congressman in the early 80s. And I'll stop.
Great. So you're a transplant from New York.
I am, and I love Western Massachusetts. It's my place of choice.
Well, we're glad that you chose here to be your home.
Thank you.
And fantastic. Rep Blais, tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you a New York transplant also?
No, I came from pretty much as opposite of New York as you can come. I grew up in a really teensy tiny town called Derby Line. It is 3 hours north of Sunderland, my hometown now. You just drive all the way till you get to Canada. You stop there. That's my hometown. We could walk to Canada from our house. We could walk to the library, which was located half in Canada and half in the United States.
Wow.
It was a great place to grow up. And we moved to Massachusetts in 2005 because of my husband's job. When I got here, I didn't have a job. And I was scouring the papers, and there was a really nondescript ad that said, "Do you want to help people? Do you want to make a difference?" And I said, yes. And so I applied. It was, I didn't know what I was applying to, but it turns out it was a position working as a caseworker for Congressman John Oliver. So I worked for him for 7 years before joining the office of Congressman Jim McGovern. I then went to work for Chancellor Subbaswamy as his first chief of staff at UMass Amherst. And then I can't remember when I met you, Eve. It may have been when I was running for office, when I was working at the chamber.
Yes. It was Deb Broadway who introduced us to each other. It was my first event in the area, and you were on the campaign trail.
I totally forgot that.
Yeah.
Deb is amazing at making connections. And I do remember meeting you for that very first time. And, talk about a trailblazer yourself. It's really been an honor and a privilege to get to know you and to see what you have done at Greenfield Community College in such a short period of time.
Oh, it's great to have the support of both of you, and you're just amazing all the way around. So it's good to have some great women in the district. And I just want to say, I can't remember the last time anyone looked for a job in a newspaper. So
I think back on that, I'm like, wow, there weren't real internet searches way back in the day.
Way back in the day. I know, we feel like dinosaurs to the young kids. I feel like that on campus all the time. So let's talk about the issues. There's a lot of talk right now at the federal level about a major infrastructure bill and funding that could successfully make its way through. In your opinion, what are the opportunities that you see there for our region, for our state? What are your thoughts? Do you want to get us started, Rep Domb? Or Rep Blais, do you want to take that
I'll
one?
let Rep Blais take that because take it first. She's
Okay.
got some areas of expertise that I think really lend itself to answering this question.
Thanks, Rep. So having worked for the federal government and been through the first stimulus package, I'm looking for every way possible to take advantage of those funds this go around. Higher education is certainly something I think we're going to see a lot of support for, and we really want to make sure that our community colleges and our flagship university are lifted up, that our students and faculty are lifted up as a result of that influx of funding. But for the First Franklin District, there are 19 communities spanning 3 different counties. And infrastructure is something I hear about every single time I talk to my select boards or individuals in those communities. Whether it's lack of broadband services and the digital divide that has really exposed some serious gaps, not only in rural Massachusetts, but across our Commonwealth, but also roads and bridges. And it's my hope that we will be able to use some of those federal dollars to bring some much needed funds into our local communities to fix those roadways and bridges that have really fallen by the wayside because of lack of funds.
That's great. Any thoughts on that, Rep. Dom?
I'm looking at the federal bill and I'm really loving the fact that they're exploring alternative ways of thinking about infrastructure in addition to traditional ways that Rep. Lay has defined. So I'm excited that things like early education and childcare are being looked at as key infrastructure pieces to the economy. I mean, I think one of the things we've seen in the pandemic is that we view early education and childcare as an essential service. We don't exactly treat it that way, and we don't exactly treat providers that way, but of course people can't go to work unless they have it. And so thinking about all the different parts of our economy and the sectors that are needed in order to support our resilient economy, I think that's really exciting. In addition, I think it's a great opportunity for seeking federal funds for municipal buildings and school buildings as part of, again, our infrastructure. We know we have a lot of aging construction that's going on. We have a lot of school buildings that need to be replaced or retrofitted. It's a great opportunity to look at what the green economy holds in terms of possibility and how this infrastructure bill can then lead to that, not only in creating a green workforce and training. And as I'm saying all this, President, I'm also thinking about all the training and workforce development that has to take place in our higher ed institutions and how that's going to play a key role in sort of linking to these projects. And community colleges are the must. So I'm actually hoping that part of what we'll see is tuition-free community college. We know that the First Lady has talked about that. She's a champion for community colleges, which I think is terrific. And how that then kind of connects to, well, we have this project we want, but who's going to be working on it? And not only who's going to be working on it, but what's the research that's needed to fuel it? And that research is going to come from places like our flagship campus in UMass Amherst. So I'm thinking about the infrastructure bill and thinking, what kind of projects are we talking about? How do we move to a green economy? And how does that then support higher ed, both at the community college level and at the university level? And then what are all the ancillary sectors that have to support people to be able to move in that direction? So that would be early education and childcare. That'd be local public health. That's a part of our infrastructure that we need more support on, obviously, through this pandemic. So I think it's exciting. It's not just a new deal. It's sort of like a new way of looking at the economy.
That's great. Much more holistic and really thinking about what are the underpinnings of a prosperous economy. So it's great to hear you that. And it's also great to hear that early education and care are really being considered in a way that they haven't been before.
And GED, I think, plays a role in that in terms of training as well as other ways. So like community colleges are like essential in making sure that we have the workforce that can be able to do that.
That's great. So let's get into community colleges. We're now in the midst of budget season for the legislature. For the last couple of years, you've both worked on financial aid and funding related legislation for higher ed, including community colleges. What are your priorities this year, this budget season? What can we expect from the legislature?
Well, I think that, so we've just started with budget season right now in the House. And what we were hoping for was a lot of extra money for higher ed, which we have not yet received. We haven't received the amount that we are advocating for. Hopefully this federal stimulus package will help us meet that. But we need to make sure that we're not only funding higher ed at the level that they need to be able to provide the service, but I am really committed, and I know Rep. Lay is too, to make sure that we're funding at a level that we're not creating a burden for our students, because there's that dynamic and there's that relationship that if we don't fund higher ed at the level that it needs to have in order to do its thing, then we have to somehow transfer that cost to somebody, and it gets transferred to the customer or the student. And that creates this unbelievable burden that not only, I think, sort of steals students' dreams, but also kind of really anchors them to paying off a debt, and then preventing them maybe from going into fields that they would like to go into because those fields may not pay enough to pay off that debt. So we really have to tackle this, and we have to look at tackling it and making a first step to doing it. A lot of people feel that this is the year to do it at the state because we did the Student Opportunity Act, which looked at K through 12 last year. Now we have to look at higher ed. Hopefully the federal government is going to help us do that with these funds. But I also have a bill in this session, and I won't talk for so long so we can hear from our player. I tend to overtalk, but around trying to help create hunger-free campuses. And this is not only an effort, it sort of dovetails with this, let's lower the debt, because if we increase students' economic security, there'll be a direct connection to increasing their food security. But it also says, how can we help campuses engage in the work around reducing food insecurity? And I'm really looking forward to seeing the conversations that happen around that bill. I'm hoping that bill will advance this term, but it's a first year that we've introduced it. And so I'm really looking at it as a way to organize and to increase education around student hunger on campuses and how debt plays a role in that. So that's
absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say we do have some great models out there. If you've not looked at the CUNY models, ASAP intervention, it really shows how investing in the wraparound services for students within 10 years, communities are able to get a return on their investment. So it is one that pays dividends. And I know that you're both aware and familiar with the economic impact study that we did for GCC to see how we are impacting the economy, what value we are adding. And we know that higher education matters.
Can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry, Natalie.
No, it's okay.
I also want to just give a big shout out to the financial aid people at GCC who not only came and talked with us and really enlightened us as to what we could do as a legislature that would not only increase financial aid, but make it easier and better for students who are receiving financial aid, but then came to Boston last session and testified before the Joint Committee on Higher Ed, and were like rock stars. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to engage you and your staff in making financial aid easier and more in the Commonwealth. So thank you so much, and shout out to your staff.
Oh, thank you so much. We have an exceptional team. Linda and Amy is just phenomenal teammates, and we're glad to have them here at the college. So Rep. Blee, what are your thoughts on the budget season? What can we expect?
Yeah, we were really pleased to see the support that our chairman of Ways and Means and speaker came out with in terms of priorities. And for higher ed, what we're looking at is $291 million for state universities, $315 million for community colleges, and $571 million for the UMass system. For scholarship funding, it's $130 million, which is $10 million over FY21. I just have to say that we, having been in the legislature for one term now, it's been a very rocky roller coaster of a ride. And for you too, Eve, I mean, we've had to do business in very different ways as a result of the pandemic. And it's impacted budgets. And we've all been doing the very best we can to make sure that our budget, we're stretching every dollar to make sure that we're supporting those most in need. And as we head into budget season, I think that's what I'm most surprised by, is how hard the House of Representatives, the chairman, the speaker, the reps worked to ensure that we drafted a budget that really cares for people who are struggling right now. And we see those investments in higher education really paying out. One thing that we've talked a lot about in the past is breaking down the barriers for higher education. And one of the ways that we absolutely have to do that is looking at access, and just to bring it back to infrastructure, supporting our RTAs, our regional transit authorities, to make sure that we're making those connections for people to make it easy to get to classes, that we have those evening and weekend services that will allow people to really take advantage of the incredible opportunities that our community colleges like GCC offer.
That's great. Actually, if I could just keep you on infrastructure a little bit, do you think the new federal bill, we are likely to get broadband monies out of that for access, internet access?
Yeah, so when the federal government decides to give any broadband money, typically it goes through the USDA because it's our rural communities who are viewed as having lack of access, which is true. Massachusetts never gets that money. It ends up going to central United States. So we have to continue to fight to raise awareness around the fact that we do have a digital divide here in Massachusetts. And I was just appointed to a commission that will begin to look at that digital divide, not only in our rural communities, but in our urban communities where there is also that lack of access. And what are we doing to make sure that not only do you have access to the infrastructure, but digital literacy? Are we making sure using that technology to advance their careers, to utilize healthcare? All of those pieces are so integrally tied to this technology, and we have to make sure that people know how to use it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for all your work around community colleges, around higher ed in general. We know that the P20 pipeline is a very important one. And here at GCC, we have a very good early education and care program that is really promoting not just quality and excellence in the care, but also advocating for better treatment, better resources, and better compensation. Because it is a field that is dominated mostly by women. And they need to be well compensated for the critical work that they do. So let's shift a little bit to getting to know you two ladies a little better. And I'm interested in how you've integrated your life before you became civil servants to your life now. Rep Dom, I know that you mentioned that you worked as a human service provider and you were such a great advocate for fairness and social equity. And now you're getting the opportunity to really make public policy on these same issues that you've been advocating for decades. So what's that transition been like for you, and how's your past work informed your current role?
Wow, that's a big question. And like I said, I can overtalk, so I'm going to try to be I think, well, it informs my work completely. I mean, it's why I ran for office. And I had some background in policy and organizing around an advocacy. And I think most of my work around human services was around sort of engaging people in the work of either government or their own behavior change. And so it was a lot of listening to people and coming to places of shared agreement and finding places where we had commonality and then moving forward in whatever way that was. And that's basically how I approach my work. I'm looking to work with other people and advocates around issues of concern that make people's lives better. And I want to find those places of shared understanding where we have a commonality so that we can build on that and move forward. I think though that, I was thinking about this recently, that the one thing I definitely not just miss about not being a rep and being a provider, but the thing that I have to make sure that I do on a regular basis to refuel is really direct service work. I do miss that a little bit. And I'm not just talking about constituent casework, although that does fill a need in some way, but it also means like volunteering at the Survival Center's monthly mobile pantry and literally using my body to pick up boxes and deliver them, saying here to somebody and thank you and have a good day. And we're glad you could come. I miss that. So I feel like part of my work-life balance is I have to make sure that's in it because it's always been in it. And not having it sort of makes me feel incomplete in what I'm doing. So I do have to do that. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
it's great. It's great. It's nice to know that the work itself gives you a sense of renewal. And that's exactly what we want in our elected officials. Rep Blais, you are the first woman to hold the first Franklin District state rep seat. Congratulations. What a feat, right? We're so proud of you. When young women and who may be interested in public service and girls and young people look at you, what do you think that represents? And what do you want to say to them about being able to break that glass ceiling?
It's a great question. I am really lucky to be standing on the shoulders of other women who have gone before me and men who have supported women like Steve Kulik, who believed in me. It is an honor to be the first woman elected to this office. But frankly, I really look forward to the day when it's not a novelty to have a woman be in these positions, whether you're the president of a community college, you're a state representative, you're the coach of a women's basketball team, whatever it happens to be. I really, really can't wait for the day when it's just normal. And I think when you ask about young women and girls approaching me, I have to say it's not that they're never approaching me and saying, "Wow, you're the first woman elected to this office." They're coming to me with their ideas and what's important to them, and that is incredibly powerful for me to have them share their concerns and what they're passionate about, and for them to just see me and know that I'm going to do everything that I can to support them and bring their concerns forward and try to lift them up. And I hope just by virtue of being able to see me in this role, that they will know that it's possible. But it's never a conversation about you're that person, you're the first. It's more about what's on their minds. And I think that is the most incredible part of being in this position.
It's great. Well, we are so lucky to have both of you representing us, and you are two powerhouses. And I know that our delegation in both Franklin and Hampshire County, we have some amazing women and some amazing men. And I just want to extend my gratitude to both of you for joining me today, but more importantly, for the work that you do day in and day out, especially during this pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us. And this has been a wonderful episode of Candor of Pres Eve. We look forward to having you next time. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
leadership.